Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to have a look at EVP, as we said, in the future of work. And I want to look at that in the context of a couple of different things, really. I want to look at that in the context of what that means to organizations and how it can help you retain and recruit people into your organization. But I want to look at it in the context as well of different generations. That's going to be particularly relevant for all of us as organizations over the next 10 years as a new generation and different generations move into our organizations and become the real bulk of the workforce. And those individuals have different values, they have different desires, they have different reasons for working, and that's going to be critical. I think one of the real positives, if there were any that came out of the pandemic, which is 4 years ago now, getting on for 5 years, was a chance to reset really how we think about work life and how organizations think about their employees. But the downside of that is it also gave individuals the chance to think about their own working lives and what do they want from an employer and what do they want from work itself. So this session, we'll have a look at that. We'll have a look at what the changing values are for different individuals. We'll have a look at how we need to think about EVP and some of the building blocks as well of EVP. We'll kind of recap on some of those as well. I think the past 10 years has seen huge changes in the workplace, not just as a result of pandemic. I think that accelerated a lot of these changes we were seeing. So things like flexible ways of working and working from home and working in different ways were already changing before the pandemic, but certainly post-pandemic, we saw huge amounts of hybrid working, particularly obviously in blue-collar environments. But we also change as well in terms of disruption of traditional sectors, the way we shop online now versus going into the high street, and the way organizations really work hard around their values and what they mean, because that then aligns with individuals' values. And we also saw organizations change in terms of the way they involve people and involve employees right across the organization in terms of what they're trying to achieve and how they do it. So change has been happening for some time in organizations. And I think that the situation since pandemic, and if I go back even further, it's certainly for the UK, for colleagues who are based in the UK, Brexit had a huge impact with workers from different countries moving back home. COVID and the impact of pandemic forced people back into the home environments as well. And right across the globe in certain industries, seeing real key issues, hospitality, people not returning to those industries in bars and pubs and restaurants. And we've seen care sector and the challenges within that sector and employees not returning to those sectors. We saw airline and airport shortages, and we're still seeing that now, perhaps not for the airlines, but certainly for companies who handle baggage at airports. They've got real shortages at present. And we've seen changes in hybrid lifestyle, people wanting to work in different ways, and that's causing real issues at the moment. There's probably, we've seen it in the US and we're seeing it in the UK now, a slow return back to the working environment away from hybrid working. And that's likely to accelerate over the next kind of 5 years. And who knows, we may be back to where we were pre-pandemic in terms of working in the office. And we're also seeing huge wage increase pressures due to cost of living, and wages continue to increase across sectors and across different work environments. And we've seen that really driving forward over the last 6 months and beyond that. So we're seeing lots of change. And obviously the spectre, if you like, of AI is hovering over all of us as well in terms of the way we lead our private lives, the way we shop, the way we do things online, but also in our own workplaces. What does the future look like? I don't think people really understand it at present and understand how it's really going to impact, but it certainly will impact, and we know that is true. Oh, and I think the other, sorry, I think the other real issue that we're seeing at present, I'm sorry, my slides are jumping around. The other real issue we're seeing at present is the the differences again that we're seeing in terms of where people work. So hybrid working has been a real kind of placeholder, if you like, in terms of the way the outcomes of the pandemic. But hybrid working is certainly changing, and we're seeing organizations now thinking heavily about that. We've gone from, totally working at home in some industries to working 1 day a week in the office to 2 days to 3 days. And we're seeing that slow creep back to a position where we were kind of probably 3, 4, 5 years ago. And that's really key, because if people want that flexibility and they want that work-life balance and they want that hybrid working, and less and less organizations are offering that, that becomes a real issue of where people work and what they value. And I think what we've seen is a real war for talent being created. So there was a Microsoft survey at the beginning of the year, beginning of 2024, of around 30,000 global workers, and around 41% of those were considering quitting or changing professions this year. Personio surveyed technology workers, and around 38% of those plan to quit over the next 6 months to a year and move jobs. And then multiple studies, if you read LinkedIn constantly, 85% of workers plan to look for a new role in 24. Doesn't mean they're going to move, but they are in that mindset that we're going to look around. And what's creating that really is wage rise. So that headline at the top there was from the Wall Street Journal this morning. So UK wage growth remained really strong and a headache for the Bank of England. And in the first quarter of this year, salaries were 6% higher than the same period the previous year. So that increases in wages across the different industries is driving this need for change and driving individuals' desire to move on. So we've got this constant flow of people across organizations and across sectors. And I think coupled with that is a real change, and this is what I alluded to earlier, a real change in the way, the makeup, if you like, of our own organizations into the future. So you can see the change there from 2022 to 2032. So Gen X, and Gen Z, so the millennial generation and the Gen Z generation are likely to be around 2/3 of the workforce in 2032. So in 10 years' time or 9 years' time now, they're likely to be around 2/3 of the workforce, and they have different values, they have different ideals about work, they have different ways they think about work. But another critical point is their average length of service is falling. So for both of those generations now, the average length of service is around just under 3 years. And in those 3 years, they're expecting the same amount of development and training and skills development that somebody who stays with you for 10 years is expecting. So we need to think about different generations in the way they think about work and the way and what they want from work. And that's critical to your EVP. So why create an employee value proposition, or why revisit it? If you have one, why revisit it? I think there's two things, or a few things now. Differentiation is really key. So for those people who are looking for work and who are moving on and who are looking to move on over the next 12 months, differentiating yourselves as an organization is really important. We know that society's changed in the last 4 years. We know that there's a different set of values that people work to in terms of ethics and in terms of social networking and these different generational preferences. So it's really important that we align ourselves to those values and those personalities, if you like. But we also create that differentiation that means that when people are choosing a new role or looking for a new role, you as an organization are front of the queue. We also know that brand equity is really important. You know, those organizations that really leverage their brand equity and leverage the brand and who they are, we know that they come out on top. So when people are applying for jobs or when jobs appear in those type of organizations, you know, the tech companies, the Yahoos and the Apples and the Googles of this world, they get multiple applications for roles simply because their brand equity is really high. And that really plays then into retention, because when people see fantastic people working for their organization and real key talent coming into the organization, they want to stay. So it really impacts on organizations internally and externally. motivated talent is a real performance differentiator. And it addresses corporate challenges. So having a strong EVP, you know, it addresses those challenges that we're all seeing within our own organizations. You know, the shortage of skilled labor globally, you know, the aging populations in Europe, in the US, in Japan, means that competition is really high for fantastic employees. Shortage of skilled workers in key sectors. I talked earlier about logistics and care and other sectors as well. The real pressure that we've all got as organizations to do with more with less. So we know that people who join organizations, who are motivated, who are engaged with the organization, who are attracted by strong EVP, are efficient. They do better. They manage things better. They work harder within the organization. So as an organization, we're having to do with more with less. But as long as you've got those workers in your organization who are working efficiently and enjoy what they do and they're empowered, you can still get there. You can still achieve what you need to achieve. Growth and profitability, really key. Recruitment and retention are becoming more critical. And popularity, great reputations, as I mentioned, just attract great people. And that's really important. That's the strength of your EVP out in the marketplace. And how attractive your company is will drive bargaining power. You know, the creation of an employer brand and an EVP brand that makes employees want to stay rather than go elsewhere is really important. Stable workforces are really key. And when you look at how organizations develop employer brands and they develop EVPs, this is a study from the US, 13 to 39-year-olds in the US, who do they want to work for? Well, it's those organizations which are attractive, and they're attractive for a reason. They're attractive because they have a strong EVP, they project a strong image, they push their brand forward to colleagues and employees and prospective employees alike. So it's really important that we drive that through. What should it look like? What's the current drivers of EVPs? Well, the EVPs are really based in the old kind of model, if you like, of as if you're a fantastic organization and you treat employees well and you're consistent and you drive them and you develop the skills and you develop the career, it's fine. People will stay with you. It's the essence of why people want to work with you. So from an organizational point of view, it's about attracting people, it's retaining people, it's engaging people. It's a consistent message internally and externally, and it creates that culture, that essence of why people want to work for you. If you look at from an employee perspective, it's the belief that discretionary effort is relevant, that you will go beyond your role because of the organization. So the EVP helps people understand why they should go the extra mile, why they should drive forward in the role. It's also what brings people's mission and vision and value to life from the organization. And it's also real and authentic promises. So it's that contract, if you like, that contract between the employee and the organization in terms of that deal that if I do this and this and this for you as an organization, you'll reward me like that. So the employee experience that people have determines lots of different things that the EVP holds and what the employee has. It's the foundation of your reputation for work. So it's a personal promise, both to existing employees and prospective employees. It's the employer brand and reputation that is built from the experiences people have, or the perceived experiences in the case of potential recruits. So it's very much that contract. It's very much around that deal about what we're offering, and it's very much how the employee experience impacts EVP. And if you think about that, it's not just about, you know, when people are working for you, it's how people view the organization externally as well. So the experience that people have with an organization is made up of a number of moments, and that might be how you're attracted to the organization, how you're recruited, the onboarding period that you go through, the connection and development and performance that you have when you're actually within the organization. But it's also about how the organization treats you across different life events. So there might be personal life events around, you know, you may go on leave or sick leave or maternity leave. And when you come back, how are you treated within the organization? But it also might be how you're developed. So you might be promoted and you might be managing a team when you've never managed people before. And how does the organization prepare you for that as well? And then eventually you exit the organization, and hopefully you exit in the right way, and you become an alumni for the organization and a supporter of the organization. But that whole experience that people see within the organization is really what dictates what the EVP looks like. It's what the EVP feels like. It's what it looks and feels like every single working day. But from an external point of view, if I'm a potential recruit for the organization, it's also what I see through social media. It's also what I see on sites like Glassdoor. It's also what I see and hear from colleagues, perhaps, who work for the organization. So it has to reflect what happens internally. So the image and the brand has to reflect what happens day to day. So having a fantastic employee experience for colleagues who are there really matters for potential recruits as well. So that employee experience really has a huge impact. And the EVP is made up of a number of different things. So the value proposition that we have is made up of 5 key areas, really. It's made up of rewards, so the compensation, the benefits, the health, whatever, the vacation, whatever we have in terms of our reward packages. It's made up of opportunities, so development, skills growth, career opportunities, company growth as well. You know, everybody wants to work for a growing company and a company that's heading in the right direction. It's organizational, it's how we're treated by leaders, it's our purpose and direction. And crucially now, certainly for younger generations, the Gen Zs, values play a really key part in that. Does the organization's values resonate with me as an individual? Do they match my individual values? Work, role alignment, innovation, balance, that's balance in terms of work life, but also empowerment. People will look for that as well. And then in terms of people, we're looking for camaraderie and teamwork and management and the quality of what we're doing in-house. And that really does 2 things. It drives commitment internally, higher levels of commitment, and attraction. It makes us more attractive as an organization. And if I break these down a bit further, I came up with 38 different attributes within those 5 packages, if you like. And there's probably more. And for you as organizations, there might be unique ones that are relevant to you as well. But all of these are important that we either measure, that we get right, that we have an answer for, because these are the kind of things either consciously or subconsciously that people are looking for in organizations. As I say, development opportunities, career, growth rate, stability. They're looking for innovation, they're looking for job impact, they're looking for involvement, etc., etc. As I said, there's perhaps more than 38 attributes and different ones for you that's important for you as an organization within your sector. But this is a good starting point as anything to get your head around. The critical thing about employee value position, it doesn't just sit on its own. You know, it sits within the whole kind of suite, if you like, of what we look at as organizations. So it has to be relevant and in line with our strategy, our mission, our vision, our values. It's about our culture, understanding and defining what they are. And then the value proposition, the employee value proposition has to align with our corporate brand. It has to align with our experience, our employee experience, as I spoke about earlier. And it has to align with our external opinion, because organizations and people externally have to see us in the same light that we do. You know, there's no point in creating an employee value proposition which says, hey, we're an innovative organization, we're an exciting organization, we're a changing organization, we're an empowering organization, if you're not. Because quite simply then, it's a stretching communication. It goes out into the outside world. People join you expecting to see that. And if they don't get that, they leave pretty quickly again. So we've got to have an employee value proposition that's based in reality and matches what people see externally as see the organization as external. So what's the process? What's the process if we're creating a new EVP or we're amending an EVP? There's 5 key steps, really, 5 essential parts. What first is understanding and positioning. Where do we want to get to, and why do we want to get there? What does it look like? So what's the real EVP? What does it feel like now in the organization? What's the reality of the situation? And we'll talk about how we measure that in a second. And what's our desired point? You know, where do we want to get to? We should have some aims. We should be stretching ourselves. So if our culture and the way we work feels like this now, where do we want to be in a year's time, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time? What should that feel like? And then we've got to understand the employee viewpoint. We've got to understand the current drivers of the culture across the organisation. We need to understand the external viewpoint. What does that look like to people from the outside? So we're making sure we've got a match there, or we're making sure that people see the key messages and the key points we want to get across from our EVP. We need to understand the drivers, what drives our EVP and what pushes it along. And then essentially we need to create messaging that's based on fact. It needs to be somewhat aspirational, but again, it needs to be rooted in the truth of what happens day to day within our organization. So really, it's about getting key answers to a number of key questions. So why do people want to join an organization? What do we offer employees that matters more than money and reward? So once we go beyond that, because people don't necessarily leave organizations because they're poorly paid, lots of people in lots of organizations perceive that they're not paid what they're worth, but they stay with the organization. So what keeps people in your organization? What values does our culture support, and does it match those of our potential recruits? Are there different patterns by age and demographic? Does the organisation employees to be effective within the role and within the organisation? Does the internal experience match that of our external promises? As I said, if they don't, and people join and they don't see those external promises within the job role and across the organisation, they will leave pretty quickly. So what we're trying to do is get an answer for a number of these key questions so we can start to build EVP around our answers. So first point, assess where we currently are. What do we want the organization to look like? What do we want the organization to feel like? And what does it look like now? How do we treat people? How do we develop people? How do we reward people? How does the organization work? Is it effective in the way we work and efficient in the way we work? So it's really useful to do a cultural audit of the organization to understand current position and where we want to be and how we can improve. What's the gap between those two standpoints, and what do we need to do to improve that and bridge that gap? And then I think part of that is understanding the culture and your people. And at WorkBuzz, this is obviously what we do. We have a platform that does that, and we run employee engagement surveys and employee culture surveys across many organizations. And really, it's really important and really key that we dive into that process and we start to understand why your employees work and what satisfaction do they gain from work, what's important to them and their current experiences, what attracted them to the organization, and is that being followed through? Because we usually see spikes in engagement levels within the first, say, 3 months of working for an organization, and it starts to tail off slightly as people go through that onboarding process and out to the other side into business as usual work life. And how do these things manifest themselves? What does that feel like working with an organization? But understanding all these different measures across the experience, across leadership skills, across leadership experience, across how we're managed and how we're empowered and how we're trained and developed. Understanding all those aspects is really important in building up that picture of what our current EVP looks like. But it's really important to reach outside the organization. So past employees are really good. So look at your exit interviews, look at your exit data, look at your information from sites like Glassdoor. That's sometimes pretty painful because, people always don't have a great exit from organizations, and sometimes the reviews that we have in Glassdoor are painful, but it's a learning experience. Why did that individual feel like that? So how do we understand how people feel externally about the organization? Another great source is recruitment agencies. So if you use recruitment agencies, speak to them about how they perceive the organization. If they're finding people for you, what does that look like? And what do we need to do better to be a more attractive workplace, if you like? And also segment the data. Where we've got our own data we've collected from employees, we collect data from an external perspective. So start then to segregate and segment the data, understand what motivates top performers in your organization, understand what motivates people who've stayed for a long time with the organization, and obviously understand what motivates people in different age groups and different generations across a piece. And that's really key that we start to understand that, because we're going to talk about how we're going to build different types of EVPs for different generations. And once you've defined your EVP, you then try to understand what those critical drivers are: salary range of benefits, what kind of career growth and opportunities will excite people, what kind of culture attracts people to your organization, what's an ideal work environment, an ideal job role for people when they join you, what they're expecting within the job role. So what essentially is going to differentiate us? What's going to differentiate that role from another one where somebody has the choice of two? And when we think about generations, it's going to be different things for different people. So an EVP for a recent graduate, and certainly somebody who's in a Gen Z type generational grouping, it might be career growth, it might be a fun office environment, it might be a positive employee experience, values that resonate with them, etc., etc. They're the kind of things we're going to have to emphasize. For somebody who's an experienced professional, it might be more around career stability and where they are in the life cycle. It might be childcare support, or it might be work-life balance. So it's different things for different generations, and we need to work on our message in terms of that, our messaging in terms of our EVP when we're looking at different roles, when we're looking at the organization itself. And as we move forward, as we said, by 2032, the bulk of our workforce is going to be millennials and Gen Z. So what appeals to those different generations, and what do we need to do to our EVPs and our messaging out into the recruitment world, if you like, in terms of what we need to tweak to make sure that we're appealing to those different groups. So once we've done all that work, once we've done all that research, once we've found out who we are, what we want to be, the drivers, once we've asked some people externally about what it feels like, what the organization look and feels like from the outside, we need then to start creating messaging, an EVP statement that appeals to these different age groups and these different generations or different groups of employees we want to recruit. And it's very much about creating a statement that's clear, unique, realistically inspirational. So again, there's no point in stretching too far from who we are and what we are, because as I said a couple of times now, if people join for that reason because we've overstretched what we're promising, and it doesn't match the reality, they will leave, and it needs to align with our expectations. Here's a couple of examples of different EVP statements that organizations have put together, and you can start to see from these different organizations how they're appealing to different people in the workplace. So if you look at PwC up there at the top, it's very much around career, it's very much around background, it's very much around solving problems and innovation and growth. So they're appealing to those individuals who are looking to move on. They're looking for people who are looking for development. They're looking for people who want to stay with the organization and develop within that. If you look at Netflix in the bottom right there, freedom and responsibility. So they're telling people, look, we're going to empower you. We're going to empower you within the role, and we're going to give you the responsibility to act and the responsibility to make decisions. And that very much lends itself to younger generations in terms of millennial and Gen Z generation. So that kind of wording and that kind of image they're creating there lends itself to that. Similarly, Nike. So we lead, we invent, we deliver, we use the power of sport to move the world. So again, they're looking at younger generations in terms of the brand itself, but they're also looking at how people innovate and develop within the role. That's really important. So they're looking for people who've got big ideas. They're looking for people who can move the organization forward. And you can read the rest there. I'm not going to go through them all, but you can kind of see in the messaging the kind of the kind of statements they're pushing across and the different generational groups that these statements are appealing to. And so that's really building that picture from a potential recruit's point of view about what the organization feels and looks like before they even start investigating roles and whether there's opportunities and vacancies there. When we talk about the younger generations, younger than me, sorry, I may be talking to some millennials and Gen Zs, but younger than me certainly. When we look at millennials and Gen Zs, what do they look for in an ideal employer? Well, 65%, so 2/3 of millennials rate greater work-life balance and personal well-being is very important when they consider a new job. So that work-life balance and well-being is really significant, really important to people. They value career growth and the flexibility that the benefits bring. So remember, those EVP statements, when you talk about Netflix, for example, it was about responsibility, it was about empowerment, but it was also talking to those individuals who are looking for that balance as well. They're empowered to create a balance within the role. If you're looking compared to older generations, millennials are more likely to look for career development by 17 percentage points, are more likely to seek remote work by 8 percentage points, and a greater work-life balance by 7 points. So that hybrid working, whilst I've said that lots of organisations have created this kind of slow burn, slow return to the working environment, we've got certainly younger generations who are holding out for that hybrid working role. So, excuse me, if we do go through a total return to the work environment, that's certainly going to be an issue for some of the people, certainly in the millennial generation going forward. And remember, the oldest millennial currently is around 39 years old, 40 years old. And the key shifts that we've seen, so these are our own surveys that we've run across across all of our surveys. So it's about 170,000 respondents that I looked at for this. The millennials and Gen Z are looking for a number of things. So that work-life balance is really important. The work ethic and the reason for work is important as well. So it's not just about money and earning money. It's much more about what I do and am I making a difference. Technology is always the answer as well. So posters on the wall or using paper to plot stuff out or whatever it might be. Technology is always the answer. So they're looking for organizations to embrace technology and develop technology. In terms of management and in terms of change, they're looking for that kind of constant need for change as well. They don't want organizations to stand still. But there's also a kind of frustration that we sense with employees of these generations where they're looking to move on quickly, they're looking to develop quickly, they're looking to progress quickly through organizations. But remember, the length of service on average is falling below 3 years. So it's quite a lot that as organizations we're expected to back into that time scale. So training will be about not necessarily about general skills development, but personal development. So it's not developing skills to do the role, it's around develop me as an individual. So I've got a basket of skills that I can use across the organization, across roles, or when I leave and move on to a different role. So some of these demands are quite difficult, if you like, for us as organizations to meet, but it's certainly the expectations of these younger age groups as they come through the organization. So when we designed the EVP, we've done all that hard work. We've looked at the research. We've done employee surveys. We've understood the current culture of the organization. We've built our EVP statements. We've looked at the external positioning as well. We've done all that. So when we build our EVP, we've got to start thinking about the people we want to appeal to, the potential recruits externally we want to appeal to. But remember, it's about the internal piece as well. So we need to communicate this well internally. But if we're looking to create the right deal for potential recruits into the organization, there's two real parts we've got to look at. There's the extrinsic in terms of rewards, the organization, the brand, the location, the environment, whatever that might be. And there's the intrinsic in terms of the work, the opportunities for the future, the culture, the people, and the lifestyle. And it might put all of those together to create a deal, if you like, to create an EVP message and an EVP future. But by the same token, you might just glue 2 or 3 of these together, and that might be the right thing for you to attract an individual. So it's very much around building an EVP with the people you want to attract in mind, not just about the general population, if you like. Make sure we're very specific about what we're offering, and so that we'll attract the right people from the right pool. And it's also about promotion. There's a lot on this slide I appreciate, but it's also about how we promote our EVP. It's not just about the careers page on your website. It's very much about developing your EVP, so it's all encompassing and it's around everybody all the time. So personalized news feeds for our own employees internally, so that we're telling them information, so that we're giving people a feel internally for what our EVP is and reinforcing it with the people who are staying with us. And that might be real-time communication. It might be how we keep employees connected through different channels and the different ways we communicate, and making them collaborate more effectively, so they're understanding more about what's happening. But externally, it's also about thinking where we want to make sure our EVP is hitting home. So it's not just about LinkedIn or website careers pages or job postings. It's also about looking for, where your candidates are. So it might be specific websites around music, for example, where you're going to position yourselves. It might be specific websites around a subject matter where you're going to position yourself. So it's not just about putting it out there on your website or a careers page and crossing your fingers and hoping it hits home. You've almost got to go and find people via your EVP wherever they are, wherever they're living, if you like, in social media or on the internet. And if it isn't just about recruitment, EVPs are internal and external. But for you, if you've been struggling to recruit, and it is about the war for talent and recruitment, as I've just said earlier, how do we ensure we're visible to the right talent? Where do we need to get our messaging? How do we ensure our message stands out? Something different, a different approach, a different wording to our EVP statements and our other messages that we're putting out there. How do we achieve clarity and consistency of message? How do we tailor it to different audiences? So, for me, Gen X, what am I looking for if you're trying to recruit me? To millennials who've probably got a family and children and they're at an early stage in their family lives, to Gen Z who could be single and young and flexible in the way they work. So how do you have that message, and how do we tailor the message? We still want to drive home the really key points about who we are as an organization, but we need to drive home those points that are going to resonate with me as an individual. And how do we become a destination and an employer, not just one of the crowd, and keeping it real, match those promises against the ones we deliver to our employees? So if it is about recruitment, and just about recruitment, there's a number of key things that we've got to hit, a number of key bullets. And the other message I would give you is that it's really important not just to assume that your EVP is working, that your EVP messaging is hitting home with people. Try and check it, just keep monitoring it. So you should be seeing higher engagements on social media and job-related posts, and you should see people connecting to you on LinkedIn and Facebook if you've got a presence there, or TikTok or whatever it might be. So on social media, you should see people linking to you and more people looking at your job-related posts if it's about recruitment. You should see an increase in applications. You should see increases in responses from passive candidates, so people who just contact you and say, "Hey, saw you're a fantastic organisation, saw what you're doing. Let me know if there's any jobs become available. I'd love to apply." You should see falling attrition, so you should see more people staying with you as an organisation. And if you're monitoring sites like Glassdoor and other review sites, you should be seeing less angry reviews, if you less negative reviews. So keep looking at these different measures in terms of your EVP to make sure it's working. And if it's not working, make sure you tweak it and try something different. And then, again, there's a range of metrics you can look at, and you'll get a copy of the slides when we're finished. But you can start to see things like web traffic and SEO and tweets and media and website analytics and engagement, performance from your own employee surveys. That all of these will point in a direction of travel. So they will all show you whether you're getting it right or wrong. I think there's just one thing to say though around a universal truth. EVP isn't not a product, and it's or a promise or a feeling in essence. It's almost the sum of all the experiences that we have with an organization, and it builds into that kind of overall cultural message, if you like, around who we are and around how we do things. But if you're trying to sell a career to people, to prospective employees, it's almost the most difficult sell of the lot, because they're intangible. You can make promises and say, "Hey, if you join us in 3 years, you'll be here, and 5 years, you'll be there, and 10 years, you'll be there." But it's intangible. We're looking into the future. We're trying to let people have a look into the crystal ball to predict where the career is going to take them and how they're going to develop within an organization. We can't set that out in front of them and make genuine promises that that's going to happen. There's lots of various factors in that. So the universal truth is that, you know, EVP is vital and important as a selling tool for you as an organization in terms of keeping people with your organization, existing employees and prospective employees, potential recruits. But it's a really, really difficult sell to sell a career in the light of other organizations who are offering similar offers, if you like, for the job, or offering similar benefits or pay or promises around career development. It's really important to get that EVP right so you differentiate and stand out from the crowd. So if I just try and pull it together, I think there's a couple of different stages to go through. That research, that planning phase, where we're understanding our own employees, we're understanding our own culture, we're understanding competitors and the recruitment industry, and we're taking all that view on board. We're understanding where we are, who we are, and what we want to be into the future. We define our EVP. We define what that looks like for us. We define what the essence is for working for the organization. We understand the gaps and we know how to close them. So we get that total understanding of what our EVP is, what it should look like, and what it should look like internally and externally to the outside world. We make sure it aligns with the brand. We make sure that we're planning for that implementation, and we make sure that it aligns with our values as well, which is critical. So that we put that in place, we create our EVP statement, we create what our EVP is, and we communicate that. We communicate it internally, we communicate it externally, so it matches. And then as we're going, we improve it all the time. We don't just create the EVP and our messaging and sit there and think, yeah, that's working fine, and we walk away from it. You need to review it at least annually to make sure it's working for you. So managing the EVP is important. Managing your brand as an organization is important. And I don't mean the brand on shelves on the packaging. I mean the brand of you as an organization that people work for. So making sure that we're managing that we're driving that through, that we're tweaking that as time moves on and things happen within the economy and within the workplace. So I think there's a number of things that are a real blueprint for success. There's 7 tips here, 7 points, if you like. Start with the research. So who you are as an employee, what you stand for, your purpose, your vision and values, the journey you're heading for, and make sure we stand out in the eyes of our employees and prospective employees. So starting with the research is critical. Research is the foundation of your EVP, understanding how people think, what they think about you as an organization, what they think about the future of the organization and how it feels working here. Align what we understand from that, what we gain from that research. Make sure whatever we create aligns with our business objectives so that we want to achieve as an organization. You know, there's no point in creating an EVP which is wildly different from what we want to achieve, our values, our objectives, our mission statement, because you know, we're kind of taking employees in one direction then and the organization culturally in a different. It's really important that those are aligned. Be authentic. You know, a refined message internally and externally that resonates with both groups of people, you know, employees, and it resonates with people externally. It's got to reflect the reality of working for the organization. It can't be wildly different because there's just a mismatch then in potential recruits that you bring through versus what they'll see when they arrive in your organization. I've talked a lot about tailoring it to different audiences, so making sure the messaging resonates with the people you're trying to reach, whether that be millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, or whoever else. You know, what you're publishing externally and what people see externally has to really wind me in, as it were. It has to reel me into the organization so I become interested in checking you out, checking out the role. And if I'm being approached, headhunted for a role, immediately that role has to resonate with me. So making sure we get that messaging right for different people is important. Use multiple channels to either gain reach. So whether that be social media channels, whether it be websites, whether it be old-fashioned print, whatever it might be, use multiple channels to gain reach into the areas where your candidates live and where they operate and where they are. And then measure effectiveness. Don't just sit back, assume it's working. Make sure it's working. There's a number of factors that I've shown you in here that you can keep looking at and keep checking on and keep measuring so that you're understanding whether your EVP is working for you. And the last thing really is solicit feedback. It's really cool that you've got those people on hand. So when you recruit people into the organization, within the first month or so, do a little exercise where you sit down with those people and say, hey, what attracted you here? What made you join us? What made you accept the role that we've offered you? You've got all those people in hand. You don't have to go externally. You don't have to go anywhere else. Look for those areas of improvement where we can improve the advertisement, we can improve the interview process, we can improve the onboarding process, we can improve their initial impression of the organization. You've got those people that are right at the very beginning of their career with you. So use them to gather that insight before they become embedded in the day-to-day activities of the role within the organization. So that's a real rush through, a really complicated topic, if you like, a really complicated thing to get right. However, it's something as organizations that we need to get right. The last 18 months now, probably 2 years, getting on 2 years, have seen huge challenges for organizations in terms of attrition and in terms of recruitment. We went through the so-called Great Resignation. I think that was a little overplayed, but certainly we saw post-pandemic a right-sizing, if you like, of different sectors across the whole economy, regardless of country or sector. It was much more around people moving to organizations that had values that resonated with their own, or a way of working that resonated with them. So it's really important that we address that. I think the other thing is, as well, is that attrition and recruitment process, whilst it's easing, it's not eased completely. There's still a huge number of vacancies, certainly in the UK and the US and across Europe. There's a huge number of vacancies still for people. So it's still a recruitees, a candidates market, if you like. And certainly where we're seeing wage increases continue. As you saw, that was a screenshot from the Wall Street Journal just this morning, talking about the quarter just gone is 6% higher. Salaries are 6% higher than they were previous quarter in the previous year. We know that wage rises are going up, so people will move for that. People will move for salary. They will move for more pay. So we're still looking at a market which is, whilst not volatile, it's still a moving feast where people are looking to move on, and there's a number of factors that's driving that, whether it be attrition rates, whether it be recruitment, whether it be people getting their EVPs right, whether it be salary they're moving on from. There's a number of factors driving this different movement in the marketplace. So thank you for listening. I hope you found that useful. The recording, slides, and we've got a new EVP book. We're going to send that to you in the next couple of days. And I'm more than happy to take any questions if Hayley can see those.
There's no questions yet in the chat. If anybody does have any questions they want to add, by all means do. Just to flag up our next webinar in the meantime, we are running one on July the 10th, which will all be around diversity, equity and inclusion. That'll be a panel discussion which will feature experts who've worked in places such as Coca-Cola, Levi's, Barclaycard, Mercedes, Petronas. So a real great global view on the world of DE&I. So if you want to sign up for that, there's a QR code there, or you can come to the workbuzz.com website and find the login page there. And as Ian has just said, if you do have any questions that come up later, I know there's been a huge amount of information in this session. I'm sure, Ian, you'll be happy to take those directly. You probably saw his email at the beginning, which was ian.barrow@workbuzz.com. So you can drop him a line, or if there's anything more general, then please do drop us a line at hello@workbuzz.com. But there's nothing else, I don't think. No questions have come in. So just to say thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you to Ian for all his great insights there, and have a great rest of the week, everybody.